You're going to hear the story of brave men who flew planes across the ocean to protect our freedoms and to protect our values. But this story comes to you, if you've opened this book, in a very interesting way, using the artistic skills of our author and illustrator to share with you the most important story. So if you're ready, I'd like to introduce to you your storyteller and illustrator today, Mr. Nathan Hale.
Thank you, everybody. Before we get started, you probably saw us running all over the place trying to get the cords and everything hooked up so that I could draw up on the screen, and it took a lot of work. It took a guy had to run to a different building and get a box, and we got cords going everywhere. So these guys worked really hard to get the drawings up on the screen, so give them a big hand up there. They did it. They did it. Ah. Otherwise, I would have to do my entire presentation on that piece of paper right there, and you guys wouldn't be able to see that piece of paper, right? So I am an author-illustrator. That means I draw pictures all day long. Anybody here draw pictures all day long? That's what I do. I wake up in the morning and I'm drawing. I go to sleep and I'm drawing. I wake up the next day and I'm drawing. I draw. Sometimes I get to go on the road and vacation to visit schools. Guess what? I'm still drawing, and I'm going to draw for you guys today. If you don't know this series, my series is called The Hazardous Tales, and you guys are lucky. You guys all got the brand new book. Came out last week. Yeah, it's good. It's good. This book is number 7. It's the latest one in the series. The first one is the Revolutionary War, then we got the Civil War, then we got World War I, then we got the Donner Party, and then we got the Alamo and the Underground Railroad, and this latest one, of course, is about World War II. If you like this book, check your library for the other ones. All of them are comic books. All of them are goofy and interesting. But there is one story that you cannot get in any of these books. This is my secret story. I told the publishers I wanted to do this story, and they said, we're not going to publish that story. It's too weird. It's too dumb. And it's definitely too gross. This is a story I like a lot, though. It's a true story from American history, and guess what? I might not be able to put it in a book, but I can tell it to you guys today. You guys want to hear this weird, gross, dumb story? Let's do it. The only way you can hear this weird, gross, dumb story is if you see me personally and I tell it right to your face. So get ready. Get ready. This is a true story from American history. All of my stories are true, but they're just told in a goofy comic book style. This story takes place in 1804. This is a time period I have never covered in any of my books. In 1804, the United States of America was like this. Boom, right there. That's all there was. Here's America. Doo-doo-doo-doo. That's it. That's all there was. This over here was France. This over here was Spain. And guess what, you guys? Florida, also Spain. In 1804, the president, Thomas Jefferson, there he is. Oh, look, it's an exact drawing. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, in 1804, he had a crazy idea. He said, this right here is not big enough. We've got to make our country bigger. Everybody thought he was crazy because this was his plan. He wanted to make America this much bigger right here, just that part. The reason he wanted this right here, this was the city of New Orleans. And New Orleans was very important because it was the bottom of the Mississippi River, which flowed all the way across America. When it got to New Orleans, it dumped out into the ocean. This was useful because if you lived along this river, if you were a farmer or a trapper or a lumberjack or whatever, you could put your stuff onto a river boat, which would float down the river to New Orleans. Once that boat floated out into the ocean, it could be transferred onto a big giant sailing ship, which would sail off to Europe, and it would sell your American goods and come back with a bunch of money. Money for the farmers, money for the trappers, money for the lumberjacks, money for everybody. But here's the problem. France owned New Orleans. It was a French city, and they could charge every single boat coming or going tons of money. So in 1804, Thomas Jefferson had one thing on his mind. That French money right there. Look at that. I want that money. He thought, how can we get it? How can we get New Orleans to be an American city? Should we go to war with France? That's probably not a good idea. We just barely finished the Revolutionary War. It was a very hard time. I don't want to fight France. I wonder, though, if we could just get a big sack of money and buy it. The whole city. Can you imagine buying a city? That was his plan. So he put together $3 million. It's a 3 right there. And he gave it to a stick man. He said, okay, stick man, you're going to France, and you are going to make a deal for that city. Here's the secret, though. I'm sending you with $3 million, but I'm also sending you with a blank check. That blank check will go all the way to $15 million. Start at 3, but if you have to, you can go to 15. Go buy me New Orleans. This guy got on a ship and he sailed over. The leader of France at that time was a scary guy to deal with. He had these big sideburns, right? And he had a long, pointy nose like this, and he had an angry little mouth. He got a gigantic hat. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon owned France at that time, and not only that, he owned all parts of Europe and everything, and he also owned this huge chunk of America. So our little guy goes over to Napoleon, all the way to France, into Napoleon's big, giant imperial palace, and he goes in there and says, okay, Mr. Napoleon, I have come all the way from America. I would like to buy the city of New Orleans. I have $3 million. Will you sell it? Napoleon said, yeah, okay. He's like, oh, that was easy. Thank you very much. And he started heading for the door, and Napoleon was like, stop right there. He's like, I'm sorry, Napoleon, are you okay? And he said, you're buying up parts of North America? And he said, well, just New Orleans, and you sold it to us, so thank you very much. I'm going to leave right now. And he's like, that's too bad, because I would like to sell all of it. And he said, really? You want to sell all of it? That's great, but I don't have that kind of money, but thanks for the offer anyway. See you later, Mr. Napoleon. And he's like, I didn't tell you how much I was going to sell it for. He's like, okay, how much are you going to sell it for? And Napoleon was like, $15 million. And the little guy was like, I have $15 million. And Napoleon was like, give it to me. It's like, hang on, I have to sail back to America. I have to ask the president. He's got to make a vote. Congress has to say yes, and then I will sail back, and I'll give you the money. It should take about a year, but then we'll make the deal. And Napoleon was like, no way. You're making the deal right now. Now or never. Can you imagine what that would be like? This guy was probably scared out of his mind. He's like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. And he gave Napoleon $15 million. And Napoleon said, congratulations. You just bought the Louisiana Purchase. The guy jumped on the boat and he sailed back and he knocked on the president's door. He said, Mr. President, I'm back from France. And the president was like, did you get New Orleans? And he said, oh yeah, I got New Orleans. And he's like, how much money's left over? He said, there's zero money left over. And he was like, oh, well, that's okay. It was worth it. And the little stick man was just laughing. He's like, you don't understand. I bought all of it. And the president was like, and he's like, are you mad? Are you mad? And he's like, no, I'm extremely happy. Suddenly, the shape of the United States changed drastically. No longer was it just the edge of the country right there. No longer was it just this big right here. Now suddenly it was, boom, this big. Thomas Jefferson walked around all day. This is exactly what his face looked like. He was just like, yeah. His hair was sticking straight up. Couldn't believe how lucky he was. He said, I'm the greatest president of all time. I just doubled the size of the country. All it took was a big bag of money. People were really upset, especially Congress. Congress was furious. They're like, we didn't vote on this. You just gave $15 million of American money to Napoleon? Are you out of your mind? He's not a dumb guy. He wouldn't sell us that unless there was something wrong with it. This is probably a giant empty desert. You just wasted all of our money. He's like, no, I did not waste your money. This was a good deal. And I tell you what, it hasn't been explored yet. And we're going to send some explorers out there, and they're going to find out that this is an amazing country. In fact, these 2 explorers, I've already hired them. They are ready to go. Their names are Lewis and Clark. That's right. This weird, gross, dumb story is a Lewis and Clark story. I said, all right, Lewis and Clark, I got 3 things I want you to look for out there. The first thing I want you to look for, a new river. If we can find a river that goes east-west, the same way that the Mississippi goes north-south, we could send riverboats back and forth on that, and we could make a lot of money. Especially if it goes all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. We will call that the Northwest Passage. I want you to find the Northwest Passage. Second, this country is not going to be empty. I bet you anything it is full of Native Americans. And I want to be friends with these Native Americans. When the settlers first came, there were wars and battles. I don't want any wars and battles. I want us all to work together to be a happy country. In fact, this is a peaceful mission. I'm sending you with these medals. On one side of the medal is a picture of me, Thomas Jefferson. On the back of the medal, it shows two people shaking hands, and it says peace and friendship. I want you to hand these out to all the Native Americans. And third, there's going to be some weird, freaky animals out there. Things we have not seen before. I want you to draw pictures of these animals. I want you to take a journal. I want you to write down their behavior, draw pictures of them. If they're small enough, I want you to capture them and bring them back. And there's one animal I want you to bring back if you find it. I need one. I want one for a pet. And they said, what kind of animal is it? And he said, these things, they are not, nobody's seen a live one before, but I'm pretty sure once you get out past the Mississippi, you are going to see herds of these things walking all over the place. They are called woolly mammoths. And they said, Mr. President, what makes you think there's woolly mammoths in North America? And he said, I don't think it, I know it. And they said, how could you know such a thing? And he said, because of this. And he held up a giant mammoth tusk. He said, do you see this mammoth tusk? This was found on a farm in Virginia. That means a mammoth died in Virginia. Do you see these things? These are giant mammoth teeth. These were found in Vermont. Every day, people all over this country bring me bones that they have found of these giant creatures. I think that they just migrated west when the settlers got here. So, when you see a herd of mammoth, I want you to go in there, and I want you to catch me a baby one. And they said, why do you want a baby mammoth? And he said, because I'm going to learn how to ride it. That's right. We are going to get matching hats. I'm going to get a big giant American flag like this, and the mammoth's going to have a cute little teeny tiny American flag like this, and we are going to march all over the streets of North America, and people will say, here comes the president on his presidential mammoth. They said, if we see a mammoth, we will definitely catch it. Let's go. And he said, go? You're not going by yourself. I'm not going to send two guys out there. We've got to put together a team. That team will be called the Corps of Discovery. To be on this team, you have got to be strong because you're going to be rowing a giant boat. You've got to be tough because you're going to be carrying all kinds of gear. But above all, you have to be cool because we don't want anybody fighting with the Native Americans. We want people that are strong and tough and cool. In fact, I'm so nervous about this, we're going to have tryouts. And we will see who is strong and cool and tough enough to be part of the Corps of Discovery. All these guys showed up to the tryouts. Now, this was a military operation, so most of these guys were soldiers. This guy's like, I'm a soldier. I brought a musket. I'm ready to go. This guy's like, I'm a soldier. I got a pistol. This guy's like, I'm a hunter. I've got a rifle. This guy's like, I'm a trapper. I brought all of my traps and all of my gear. And this guy's like, I've got a pistol and a musket. And this guy's like, I got a musket. I got a rifle. I got two pistols. I got traps. I got a bow and arrow. I got a spear. I got all of this stuff. This guy's like, I brought a shovel. It's a shovel. One guy showed up, and he was so big and strong, he didn't even need any weapons. He was just like, Also, there was a dog. A dog came to try out for the Corps of Discovery. The dog came. There really was a dog. The dog. Lewis and Clark said, okay, wow, look at this. This is amazing. I like this. We're going to take this guy. We're going to take this guy. I like this guy. This guy's good. This guy. Oh, look at this guy. It's a guy with all the weapons. Are you going to share those weapons with the Corps of Discovery? And this guy was like, if you touch my weapons, I will kill you. And they're like, yeah, that is not cool. We are not going to, I'm sorry. You might be strong and tough, but you are not cool, so you are not coming with us. And Shovel Guy, you are not coming with us either. We don't need a Shovel Guy. But we're going to take this guy, and we're going to take the dog. This guy right here is my favorite guy in the Corps of Discovery. His name was York. No last name, just York. York was the only African American to go on the Corps of Discovery. Now, you guys know a lot about American history. You know it's filled with horrible, awful things. Well, York was born during one of those terrible times. York was a slave. He worked for Captain William Clark. In fact, they grew up together in the same house. Can you imagine how weird that would be to grow up in somebody's house and you would play with their kids sometimes, but most of the time you just did all the work because they owned you? That was the relationship that Captain Clark and York had. When Captain Clark said, hey, I'm going to go explore North America, York, you're coming with me, York had to go. He had no choice. But something really interesting happened with York. As soon as they got away from the cities, out into the wilderness, away from the slavery and the horrible traditions of that time, nobody treated York like a slave anymore. He was too helpful. He knew the wilderness too well. He was too good of a scout. He was too good of a hunter. He very quickly became an equal, and not just that, but a leader in the group. And a lot of times we say, oh, Lewis and Clark discovered this, and they saw this for the first time, or they saw that for the first time. A lot of cases, it was York who was scouting ahead, who saw all of this stuff before anybody else. If you see biographies on York at your library, check them out. They are very interesting. The Native Americans loved York. See, Lewis and Clark would get all dressed up to go into a Native American village. They'd put on their giant Napoleon-style hats, and they'd put on their Captain Crunch-style shoulder pad thingies. They'd get their military uniforms on because they wanted to look impressive to the Native Americans. They wanted the Native Americans to think they were really important, and they would say, we are Lewis and Clark. We are now part of this country. We would like to give you this medal, blah, 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 blah. The Native Americans would come out. And they'd be like, they'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And the Native Americans would be like, who's that guy right there? And they'd say, no. We are trying to give you this very important medal. Please take it. And they're like, yeah, that's a really nice medal, but who's that guy right there? And they'd say, please, take this medal and welcome to our country. And they're like, fine, we will take the medal, but we got to talk to that guy because that's the guy in charge. And they would run out, and all the adults would just grab onto his arms, and they'd just be like, oh. The little kids would come out and they'd be like, oh. And they would say, who are you? And where did you come from? And he'd say, I'm just here exploring with Lewis and Clark. And they'd say, what's your name? York? That's not a very good name. You need a more powerful name than that. From now on, we will call you the Buffalo Man. Because you are as strong as a buffalo. You got curly hair like a buffalo man. Buffalo Man, will you stay with us forever because we love you? He'd be like, I'd like to, but I got to go explore with Lewis and Clark. And they'd say, please. I'd say, nope, I have got to go. They'd say, okay, fine, Buffalo Man, you can leave, but first, give us that dog. This dog was a Newfoundland dog. You ever heard of a Newfoundland dog before? They're huge. They're giant dogs. If you can imagine the biggest, I think it's number 3 as far as dog breeds go. They're about this big. They're just big, long, shaggy dogs. The cool thing about Newfoundlands is they got webbed paws. This makes them into super swimming dogs. Giant dog. Lewis and Clark brought this dog with them. They did not expect how excited the Native Americans would be about the dog. See, Native Americans had dogs. Going way back pre-Columbian times, there were dogs all over this continent, but they were little Chihuahua dogs. The Native Americans had never seen a giant dog before. Imagine if your friend was like, hey, come over to my house. I want you to see my new kitten. And you go to their house, and their kitten's like the size of a car. That's what it was like when the Native Americans saw this dog. They loved this dog so much, they were like, that's the greatest dog of all time. In fact, there was almost a battle between an entire village and the Corps of Discovery over the dog. True story. In any case, I'm getting way ahead of myself because we haven't even set out yet. They said, okay, Mr. President, we had tryouts. We ended up with about 40 tough guys and a big old dog. The president was like, okay, that sounds pretty good. How many women are in the Corps of Discovery? They said, women? This is a military operation in 1804. 0. He said, well, that's not very fair. You need some women in this group. They said, what women are going to want to come on this trip? One of the guys that they hired was a French trapper. He had a big shaggy beard and like a Santa Claus hat type thing, right? His name was Toussaint Charbonneau. Charbonneau said, hey, we need to bring a woman. We will bring my wife. And they said, is she a French lady? And he said, no, she's not a French lady. She's a Native American lady. She'll be great on this trip. You guys are going to love her. Her name is Otter Woman. They said, whoa, that's her name? Like her first name is Otter and her last name is Woman? She sounds awesome. Mr. President, we got 40 tough guys, we got a dog, and now we got Otter Woman. And the president was like, where is she? I don't see an Otter Woman anywhere. Charbonneau was like, oh, she's not here. She's on the way. We'll pick her up as we go. It's done. There's now a woman in the group. He said, okay, how about a doctor? Is there a doctor in the Corps of Discovery? And they said, no. He said, well, that's not very safe. What if somebody gets hurt? And they said, here's our plan. We won't get hurt, and then we won't need to bring a doctor. The president was like, that is the stupidest plan I have ever heard. Do you have a dietary nutritionist that will make a meal plan in the wilderness for you guys? And they said, we don't even know what that means. The president said, I refuse to send you into the wilderness without some sort of medical expert. So if you're not going to bring a doctor, one of you has to learn how to be the doctor. You, Captain Lewis, Meriwether Lewis, you have to go learn how to be a doctor. But don't worry, I'm sending you to the best doctor in America. He's a weird little man. His name is Dr. Benjamin Rush. You will go learn from Benjamin Rush how to be a doctor. So Captain Lewis goes to this guy's house. He said, okay, Dr. Rush, make it quick. I want to go on this journey. Please tell me how to be a doctor. Benjamin Rush said, all right, I have prepared for you a box of surgical tools. Anything you need to do, you can find the tools for it in this box. Take it with you. It's like a first aid kit. What kind of operations do you think you will have to perform? Meriwether Lewis was like, I guess I should know how to fix a broken arm. Benjamin Rush was like, okay, broken arm, that's a common operation. I think you can handle it. What you want to do first is find where the bone is broken. Just very softly, carefully find where that bone is broken. Once you've found the break, I want you to go up about 3 inches and draw an X right on their arm. And then I want you to reach into the old first aid kit here, and I want you to get out the giant bone saw. I want you to go to that X right there and just start sawing like crazy. Now, blood's going to shoot out all over the place. You're going to get blood all over your face and all over your clothes. And there's going to be a lot of screaming, too, so you're going to want to put some cotton wads in your ears. But just keep sawing through all of the blood and all of the screaming. Pretty soon, the broken arm will be gone, and the patient will be happy. Meriwether Lewis was like, okay, nobody's allowed to break their arm. But Dr. Rush, what if they break their leg? And Dr. Rush was like, okay, carefully feel for the break, get the saw, and saw the entire leg off. And he's like, wait, Dr. Rush, are you sure? Because I feel like a sawed-off leg is 1,000 times worse than a broken leg. And Dr. Rush was like, hey, who's the greatest doctor in America, buddy? This is 1804. If they break their leg, you saw it off. Meriwether Lewis got really quiet and he said, Dr. Rush, what if they break their head? Please tell me I don't saw their whole head off. Dr. Rush was like, you are the worst medical student I have ever had. If they've got a head injury, if they're feeling sick, they've got a fever, if they just can't go on, put away the bone saw and get out the knife. I want you to take that knife and I want you to make deep cuts all over their body. We want blood to just shoot out all over the place. If enough blood shoots out, the disease will shoot out. And if that doesn't work, I got a jar full of leeches. If you put the leeches on the patient's skin, the leeches will suck the disease out of their body, and the patient will be super, super happy. True story. I am not making any of those operations up. Those are all operations performed millions of times by Dr. Benjamin Rush throughout his very long career as a doctor. And not just by him, but by virtually every doctor in America in the 1800s. Meriwether Lewis grabbed that first aid kit and he said, thank you for the first aid kit, Dr. Rush. I'm just going to leave now. I kind of hope I never see you again. And he started running for the door. Dr. Rush stopped him and he said, no. I haven't told you everything yet. I haven't even told you about these. And he held up a giant jar of pills. And he said, these are my newest invention. I call them Dr. Rush's bilious pills. You got to take these in the first aid kit. And Meriwether Lewis was like, what's in those? And he said, don't worry about what's in them. I've already made the recipe. If your stomach hurts, take a pill. And he's like, what will happen if I take one of the pills? And he's like, don't worry about it. If your stomach hurts, just take one. And he said, but what will happen to my body if I take one of these pills? And Benjamin Rush just had a creepy smile. And he said, take one if your stomach hurts. You'll find out. And he put the jar of pills into the first aid kit, and they finally set out on their journey. Whew. Now, Lewis and Clark did not walk across America. When they started the journey, they did it in a giant river boat. It was called a keel boat. It was about 50 feet long, so probably a little longer than this stage right here. All these 40 tough guys that they hired had big giant oars, and they were rowing up the river, upstream, like a big giant Viking ship. York would stand on the front of the boat up here. He would guide them from running into the rocks and stuff, and he would also just flex his muscles for everybody. Lewis and Clark would stand back up here on this house thing on the back, and they were drawing maps as fast as they could. They were mapping, oh, the river turns here, there's a waterfall here, there's a dead end here. They were drawing maps for the explorers who would come after them. That big dog would stand on the back of the boat and just bark at everything. He was like, woof, 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 woof. They had a sail that they could put up and sometimes catch the wind and push them along. They had a scout canoe. They had a bigger scout boat called the pirogue that these guys would scout around on the waterways with. And this is how they went exploring through America. They had been out for a couple of weeks, and that French guy, Charbonneau, he said, stop the boat. And they said, why? And he said, because we're by Otter Woman's village. They said, oh yeah, Otter Woman. We forgot all about her. Go get her. So Charbonneau jumped off the boat and trudged into the village. He came back a little while later, and he looked very upset. They said, what's the problem, Charbonneau? And he said, oh, you're not going to believe it. I've got good news and bad news. I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, Otter Woman is missing. She took off a couple of months ago. Nobody knows where she went. So we can't take Otter Woman. They were like, ah, that's terrible. What's the good news? And he's like, you're not going to believe this. Otter Woman is missing. But guess who is here? My other wife is here. They said, whoa, Charbonneau, how many wives do you have? Charbonneau's like, I just have two. I got Otter Woman, and I got this one right here. Isn't she great? And they said, well, does she want to come with us? And she spoke up, and she said, yeah, I'll go with you. And they said, well, what can you do for us? And she said, well, I'm a Native American. I can speak several Native American dialects, so I can be your translator. That would be important. Also, I was born out west. I know exactly where to go, so I can be your guide. Also, I can hunt, and I can fish, and I can trap. And is that your scout canoe right there? And they said, yeah, that's our scout canoe. And she said, give me a paddle. And she grabbed a paddle and started paddling this thing around like a little speedboat, just like. Captain Clark was like, she is faster than any of you guys in that canoe. Lady, you are hired. What is your name? And she said, my name is Sacagawea. Sacagawea had just joined the Corps of Discovery. They said, welcome aboard, Sacagawea. And she said, I am happy to be here. And she stood up out of that scout canoe, and her belly was sticking way out. They said, whoa, Sacagawea, why is your belly sticking out? And she said, oh yeah, I'm going to have a baby. And they said, you can have a baby? You can't go on a journey into the wilderness like that. This is going to be dangerous. And she said, why? And they said, because you're going to have a baby. And she said, yeah, deal with it. He said, okay, we will deal with it. They had finally assembled. The Corps of Discovery that you read about in your history books had finally assembled. They were all together. Now, I've told you this is a true story, but there's one thing I have to correct that is not historically accurate. And that is, I've been making Sacagawea speak English. That's not true. Sacagawea never, ever spoke English, never in her life. I've been making Charbonneau speak English. That's not true either. Charbonneau spoke French, of course, but he could also speak Sacagawea's language, which was called Hidatsa, right? So if they wanted to talk to Charbonneau, they had to get another one of their French trappers, a one-eyed guy named Pierre Cruzet, and they'd say, hey, Pierre Cruzet, we need to talk to Charbonneau. So we will tell you in English so you can translate in French, so he can translate for Sacagawea. And it got even more complicated when they were meeting with Native American leaders across this country. They would go into a Native American village, and they'd say, okay, everybody line up. Okay, Pierre Cruzet, we will tell you in English, so you can tell Charbonneau in French, so he can tell Sacagawea in Hidatsa, so Sacagawea can tell that guy in whatever his language is. We actually have no idea what Sacagawea was telling these leaders of the Native American community because nobody was recording what she was saying in a language anybody could read. So we don't even know what she said, but whatever it was, it must have worked because everything went pretty smoothly. Keep in mind, the America that they were exploring was a vast wilderness. Small Native American villages here and there. At night, the only light would be firelight or starlight. There was no English. There was no Spanish. There was no French. This was a complete foreign country to everybody in the group except for Sacagawea. But just like the president expected, once they got out into the wilderness, every day they started seeing crazy new animals. They looked out one day and they saw a coyote. And they were like, oh, what's that? What is that thing? What is that crazy? What, is it like a baby wolf? Is it like a really ugly fox? What is that thing? I said, oh, this must be a brand new animal. Get out the journal. We got to draw a picture of it. And they got out and they were drawing it. They're, oh, this is so exciting. Oh. Sacagawea came over and she's like, what are you guys doing? And they said, Sacagawea, we have just discovered a new animal, a species nobody has ever seen before. Sacagawea's like, what are you talking about? That is called a coyote. Every Native American ever knows about those. And they're like, no. We discovered it. She's like, no, you didn't. Everybody knows about those. And they're like, no. We discovered the coyote. She's like, how do you even know it's called a coyote? I just told you it's called a coyote. They're like, be quiet. Sacagawea, we discovered the coyote. We've got to draw pictures of it. We got to write it down for science. We got to get samples of its fur. We must smell the coyote. We must taste the coyote. Sacagawea was like, why would you taste a coyote? And they said, because it might be delicious. This thing might be the most tasty animal since chicken, and we won't know until we barbecue the coyote. And they did. They barbecued the coyote. Another day they were going along and they saw an antelope. It's like a deer, but it has straight horns. Lewis and Clark were freaking out. They were like, we just discovered a new species of deer. Sacagawea was like, you did not. I said, yes, we did. We got to draw a picture of it, and then we got to barbecue it. Definitely going to eat this one. This one looks good. One day they were going along. Now, you're not going to believe this, but people from mainland, the 13 colonies, had never seen a pelican before. Lewis and Clark had never seen this bird before. I imagine York looked at this pelican and was like, that is the ugliest seagull I have ever seen. Let's barbecue that ugly seagull. And they did. They were going along. They made it all the way out to the Great Plains. Lewis and Clark were walking along shore because they couldn't catch any wind. It was very, very slow going. They were just walking along out there. The wind had died down. Everybody was just kind of sitting hot in the boat. As they walked along the shore, they looked down. They saw these little holes everywhere. They said, what is this? Is this a new kind of creature? And just then, a furry head popped out of the ground. They said, oh, look at that. It is a new creature. We got to capture it. And they ran over, and it ducked down into its hole. So they dug, and they dug, and they dug. They couldn't find it anywhere. Then it popped up over here. Bing! They're like, oh, there he is. Go get him. Go get him. And they dug, and they dug, and they dug, and they couldn't catch it. They said, all right, everybody stop the boat. This is a new creature. We've got to explore. We've got to catch it. Everybody off. So all 40 of these tough guys from the Corps of Discovery all piled off the boat, and they just started digging all day long. They dug, and they dug. And they said, you know who we should have brought? We should have brought that guy with the shovel. They dug, and they dug, and they dug. They couldn't catch the animal. Finally, somebody said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a couple of buckets, and we're going to fill the buckets with river water, and we're going to dump water down into these holes until it floods the den, and it will force the animal out. So they formed a huge bucket chain to the river, and they did this for hours. I like to imagine that a couple of Native Americans were standing off to the side and just going, what are those guys doing? What's going on? Why are they dumping buckets in the ground? They did it all day. Sun started going down. Finally, they flooded the entire zone and outwashed a soggy little prairie dog. And they all ran over and they grabbed it. And they said, we just discovered prairie dogs. And they held it up in the air like, oh. And they started marching around in a circle in a little parade going, we discovered prairie dogs. We discovered prairie dogs. And these Native Americans were like, we discovered idiots. What is going on over there? They said, well, we discovered prairie dogs. Let's barbecue the prairie dog. I said, no. We are not going to barbecue a prairie dog. We spent all day trying to catch this little prairie dog. And besides, look at this little guy. He's kind of cute. He's got little prairie dog arms. He's got a cute little prairie dog nose. And look at his little prairie dog eyes. We don't want to barbecue this little guy. He's cute. Let's keep him for a pet. And somebody said, wait a minute. I've got an even better idea. What if instead of keeping him as a pet, we send him to the President of the United States and he will be the president's pet? He said, yeah, that's a great idea. So some poor guy had to take this prairie dog in a cage all the way back. He walked all the way across the Great Plains. He got all the way back to the Mississippi River, caught a riverboat down to New Orleans, caught a sailing ship up to Washington, D.C., finally goes into the president's office. Now imagine Thomas Jefferson. He's sitting in his office, probably writing with one of these big feathery pens, sitting at his desk, doing boring stuff. There's a knock on his door. Mr. President, can I come in? I have brought to you a new animal. Lewis and Clark discovered it. Nobody has ever seen one of these before. Now maybe for just a second he was like, they found my baby mammoth. And he throws the door open expecting to see this giant woolly mammoth sitting in his hallway, and it's just a dumb prairie dog. Now, maybe he was disappointed, but the longer he looked into that prairie dog's little eyes, the bigger his smile grew. And he reached in and he grabbed that little prairie dog by his fluffy little belly, and he couldn't help himself. Little hearts popped out of Thomas Jefferson's head, and he said, I love you, prairie dog. And the prairie dog said, I love you too, Thomas Jefferson. You're the greatest president. No. I'm sorry, you guys. We're at the Miami Book Fest. I was just trying to make you laugh. I told you this was a true story. I got to back that up. The prairie dog did not say, I love you, Thomas Jefferson. I don't want anybody going home and telling, hey, Mom, Lewis and Clark discovered a talking prairie dog. It's just a regular prairie dog. 100% normal prairie dog. But the president really did love this prairie dog. He kept it in his office. And when people would come and visit the American president, all the senators and congressmen and foreign people would come meet the president. They would meet the president, and then they would meet the prairie dog, and they'd feed him a little cookie or cracker or something. After a while, he became the fattest little prairie dog in all the land. True story. True story. Now, let's see. I told you that dumb story about a prairie dog. I told you some weird stuff about Benjamin Rush. What haven't I gotten to yet? The gross stuff. All right, you guys, hold on to your hats. We just have a few minutes here to get through this. Hang on. Lewis and Clark had been out on their journey between 4 and 5 months at this point. In their journeys, they discovered over 200 new species of animals that had never been recorded for science before. And all of those amazing new animals, they barbecued. It's all they ate. For the first 4 or 5 months of their trip, all they were doing was eating barbecue. Now, you cannot live that way. Something horrible will happen to your stomach. Here is a stomach. Here is, of course, the main part of the stomach where the food gets digested, and then, of course, the intestine where the food goes. Here's where the food goes in, and here's where the food goes out. If you eat a bunch of barbecue, it goes down into your stomach like a giant block. But, of course, when we have a barbecue today, we're also eating fruits and vegetables and chips and salad and salsa and Jell-O, all kinds of juice, corn on the cob, cornbread, so much good stuff. All of that helps break everything down so that it can all go out nice and easy. Lewis and Clark were not eating any of that stuff. When they had a barbecue, it was just wham, block of meat. Followed by wham, another block of meat, coyote meat, antelope meat. I hate to break it to you guys, but once they learned how to catch prairie dogs, they were having little mini prairie dog barbecues. And then they got to the buffalo, and the buffalo was just meat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, nothing but blocks of meat. After a while, their entire stomach was completely blocked with meat. Hard to digest, hard protein. They could squeeze food in when they got really hungry, but no matter how hard they tried, this blockage was not going anywhere. They could not go to the bathroom. If you need it any clearer, the core of discovery became the core of constipation. It really did. It really did. They would get into camp at night and they would lay down on the ground in severe pain, just flat on the ground with their bellies sticking up like this, just like, swollen belly sticking out like this. Here's Meriwether Lewis back. Here's Clark back here. Their bellies just sticking out. Here's York. Oh, York, what did you do? No. York. Look. He's still got the muscles, though. He's still got them. At this point, they pretty much all looked like Sacagawea, right? There they are. Sacagawea goes up to Meriwether Lewis one day and goes, hey, when's your baby due? Ha, 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 ha. Meriwether Lewis was like, that's not funny. It's not funny, Sacagawea. And she's like, I'm sorry. The reason I ask is, do you want to know when my baby is due? It's due right now. And he's like, what? She said, yeah, you're the doctor. You're going to help me with this baby. And he's like, Benjamin Rush did not teach me that operation. And she said, too bad. We're going to do this. Now, fortunately, at that point, they had built a little fort that they were staying in. And they kicked everybody out of the fort, and they got a nice big fire going, and she delivered the baby that night. She came out the next morning, and she was holding an adorable little baby boy. Sacagawea came out. Everybody said, they all gathered around. They were all very quiet. They said, Sacagawea, does this mean that there is a baby in the core of Discovery? And she said, yep, there's a baby in the core of Discovery. They said, Sacagawea, what's that baby's name? And that French guy jumped out, and he said, we will name the baby after me. My name is Toussaint Charbonneau. We will name this baby Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau. And Sacagawea said, Charbonneau, we won't. No, she didn't say that because she couldn't speak English. But if she could speak English, she would have said that. Nobody ever called this baby Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau. They gave him the cutest baby nickname in all American history. They nicknamed him Pomp. When your mom says, hey, what did you learn at school today? Just look straight into her eyes and go, Pomp. Sacagawea had a baby and his name was Pomp. The great thing about little baby Pomp is he never, ever cried, but he laughed all the time. He'd just be like, ha, 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 ha. They'd be out hiking, and he would see like a bear, and he would just laugh at the bear. Ha, 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 ha. They'd get into camp, and he would point at their bellies, and he'd be like, ha, 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 ha. They would say, baby Pomp, you shut your baby mouth. We are in terrible pain. This hurts. We cannot digest our food. This hurts so bad. And that is when somebody finally said, wait a minute. What's this first aid kit? And what are these pills? And that is when Meriwether Lewis remembered the creepy face of Benjamin Rush, saying, you'll find out. And he knew they were about to find out. You guys are about to find out. Now, history does not say who the first person to take one of these pills was. We will say that it was Captain William Clark. He opened up this jar of pills and he took one out. Now, pills were bigger in those days. If you can imagine a pill like the size of a bouncy ball. Also, they were coated in animal intestine. That's what held them together. He took one of these pills out, and Meriwether Lewis was like, this is going to be horrible. I can't watch. I can't even look. Sacagawea came over and she's like, this is going to be hilarious. I will watch this. I will watch this. She brought over Baby Pomp, and Baby Pomp looked at the pill and was like, ha, 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 ha. York came over, and York was like, there is no way I am eating an intestine-covered bouncy ball. No way. I'm not going to do it. The dog came over and was like, did you say intestine-covered bouncy ball? I will eat that. Everybody from the Corps of Discovery came over. They didn't have a lot of entertainment at night. The idea of watching the captain eat a pill, pretty good entertainment for them. They said, do it, Captain Clark. Eat that big pill. Eat it. Eat it. He took the pill, he popped it into his mouth, and he swallowed it down. Past the point of no return. Soon, all you could hear was the campfire crackling, maybe the river going past, or the crickets out in the trees. Got very quiet. As they watched, Captain Clark's cheeks started to turn red. And he started to sweat a lot. And his eyeballs got really big, and then his pupils got really big, and his mouth was doing all kinds of weird shapes. And he finally jumped up, and horrible sounds were coming from his stomach, and he said, I think I know what these pills do. And he ran off into the bushes. Everybody followed to see what would happen to him next. These are the bushes. These are the legs of the great American explorer, William Clark, sticking out from behind the bushes. He was bent over in half, his poor swollen stomach down between his legs like that. His hands were clenched tightly together like he was praying or something. But he wasn't praying because his teeth were gritted together like this. He's making a hat. Everybody came over and they said, Captain Clark, are you okay? What's going on? And he started screaming. They said, Captain Clark, what's happening? Are you hurt? And he screamed even louder. They said, Captain Clark, what is going on? And suddenly, there was a giant explosion. It just went on and on and on and on and on. He screamed, "Ah! Ah! Ah!" Little baby Pomp had never laughed so hard in his entire life. He was like, "Ha ha 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 ha." When Captain Clark came out from behind those bushes, he was very, very skinny. His hair was messy, his clothes were all sweaty. Behind that bush were terrible stink lines coming out. He held out that jar of pills in a very shaky hand and he said, "These pills work. Everybody has to take one of these pills." So all 40 of these tough guys from the Corps of Discovery were each given a Dr. Rush's bilious pill. And they were each sent out to their own quiet, private place in the woods. And they all swallowed their pills down. And for a while, it was quiet in the forest. And then explosions just started going off everywhere. York set off a mushroom cloud. It was just like kaboom. Slowly, one by one, all these guys stumbled back into camp. Nobody spoke. They all just sat down around the campfire and they just kind of stared at each other. They didn't know what to say. They knew that they had all just shared an amazing experience. Finally, one of these guys stood up and he said, "These pills will never be called Dr. Rush's bilious pills again. From this day forward, I say we give them a new name. I say we call them Thunderclappers." And they did. That's what they call them. We know this is true because they wrote it in their official journals to the President of the United States. You will see this word thunderclapper appear again and again. If you do not believe me, Google Lewis and Clark plus thunderclappers. First time I heard about these things, I said, all right, I need to know one thing. What did Benjamin Rush put in these pills to make them so powerful? Fortunately for us, we have his recipe. We know the outside was animal intestine. We also know he put in a tiny bit of cayenne pepper to make it spicy. But the main ingredient for these pills was 100% pure mercury. If you don't know what mercury is, it is a liquid metal. It looks like silver, but it flows like cold pancake syrup. Dr. Rush took this mercury and he condensed it into something called mercury chloride, and that is what these pills were made out of. Now, why didn't they die of mercury poisoning? Isn't mercury poisonous? It is. Today's mercury is deadly. Today's mercury is made in a laboratory. If you even touch today's mercury, it'll get on your hands, your skin will absorb it, you will go to the hospital, and you will die. Lewis and Clark did not have chemical lab mercury, though. They had something very rare and special called elemental mercury. They loved their mercury so much, Dr. Rush even sent them with a bottle of liquid mercury. And some days they'd be like, you know what? I don't think I can handle a whole thunderclapper pill today, but just pass me that bottle of mercury and I will just drink liquid metal. And that's what they did. And of course, it would just clean them straight out. Ugh, scary to think about. We know it's true because they wrote it in their journals, and we also know it's true because there is leftover evidence. Today, if you go hiking on the Lewis and Clark Trail, you can find lost campsites that are not on any map and not in any book. And the only way you can find these campsites is if you bring a metal detector. You'll be walking along, nothing, nothing, nothing. Suddenly your metal detector will start to beep. And it will say, this piece of ground right here is filled with millions of microscopic mercury particles. And that is because over 200 years ago, Lewis and Clark, or somebody from the Corps of Discovery, ate that mercury. And then they pooped it on the ground. True story, true story. That is a 100% true story. That is not my favorite thing about Lewis and Clark, though. I will finish with my 100% favorite thing about Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark were a military operation. In a military operation, one person makes all the decisions and everybody else obeys. They did not do it that way. When they had an important decision to make, they did it by vote, which is kind of special. But here is where it gets very amazing. Do you know who had a vote? As important as Lewis and Clark or anybody else in the Corps of Discovery, York had a full vote. Keep in mind, this is 60 years before the Civil War, 160 years before civil rights, and here is an African-American voter. This makes him the first major African-American voter in an American mission. I think he deserves a hand for that, right? That's amazing. Incredible. But guess what? Guess who else had a full vote when they made big decisions? Sacagawea had a full vote. This is before women could vote. This is a Native woman voting in 1804. It's amazing. It's amazing. So here, way hundreds of years before a true democracy would come to this country, way out in the wilderness, was a group with a true democracy, and that is my favorite thing about Lewis and Clark. I'll tell you who didn't get to vote, though. Baby Pump. And the dog, because dogs and babies don't know how to vote. The end. Give yourselves a hand, you guys. You made it to the end. Woo! Thank you, everybody.